Hi there, YouTube. It's been a while. I have been very, very busy, and that's why you haven't seen me. So I am going to start doing some more videos. I have a couple more like Q&A type videos that I'm going to be putting out here soon, including one about the different denominations of demonolatry, as well as the difference between physical manifestation and smoke and mirrors, which should be kind of an interesting discussion anyway. But today I'm going to go ahead and go through and basically give you an overview of some of the books that I've been working on. I know a long time ago we did a DB Publishing display of all the different books we have available, but I kind of wanted to take you through some of the different titles that we have. Aside from the two basics that everybody knows, of course we have the complete book of Demonolatry. Everyone pretty much has this book. They've all started. We are working on a second revised and expanded edition of the complete book of Demonolatry, and the reason for that being that, as it turns out, I have a lot more to say, and there's just a lot of stuff in here that could use some updating. Not only because as a magician, my viewpoints have kind of expanded on some of this stuff, but also because a lot of questions from this book have spurred answers, and so I would like to include those answers in the book to kind of help people out a little more. So be watching for that. I don't have a release date on that. Tentative, it should be before 2020. I know that's not saying much. That's like within the next 5 years, but we are working on it. Suffice to say, this book still suffices. I am going to put a better editorial team through it this time to look for inconsistencies in spelling, because a lot of people couldn't deal with the whole name game thing and the variant spellings of different demonic names. It was just too confusing for them. So, and I have a really bad habit of that. Like in one section I'll say Anubis, and the next I'll say Ampu, and I mean the same demons, or Gamagen and Samagina. It's the same thing. So, anyway. And then, of course, everybody knows about the Demonolator's Guide to Demonic Magic, which is basically tons of correspondences. If you ever want like demonic correspondences for just about everything, and like a brief overview of all of the different techniques of magic that you can use in conjunction with the demonic, that's this book right here. So this is just basically an essential reference. I don't know necessarily that that's a book you read from cover to cover. You basically read up on topics as you're interested in that particular one. Some of these books here that I have are actually fairly old. I have been like super busy. For example, like Curses, Hexes, and Crossings. This isn't necessarily demonolatry related, but it's actually quite popular because it kind of covers curses from around the world and just gives you enough to be dangerous. I have a fascination with execration magic, so I don't use it very often, but I do enjoy the study of it and looking at the different cultural ways that people have used curses in their magic. And that's a practice that kind of spans time. And of course, many of you know about Sigillum Diaboli, which is basically divining with demonic sigils. And it kind of goes through and gives you an overview of what many of the Ducante and all of the Goetic sigils kind of mean. Gives you some ideas on different spreads you can use for divination with sigils. So if divination is your thing, that's one area to go into there. I should probably have kept that along with drawing down Belial, but we'll discuss that in a minute. And then everybody knows about Demonolatry Goetia already. That's one of the popular ones, and I apologize for the glare, but I've got a light source back here that's just kind of glaring everything. And this particular book just basically explains how to modify traditional Goetia into demonolatry-friendly workings, so that you're not pissing off demons and trying to control them and being disrespectful. So, and it also gives alternative purposes for the goetic hierarchy that you can kind of work with that aren't nearly as limiting as some of them in the original text. Yes, I am currently working on a Goetia grimoire called The Sacred Infernal, and that particular book really delves deeper into goetic work from a demonolatry perspective, and it perhaps even more of a chaos magic perspective, considering that that's kind of where my magical leanings are personally. So, something to consider. Okay. Like I was saying with Sigillum Diaboli, if you're really into divination, so the Demonolator's Guide to Demonic Magic gives you some of that. The Sigil, Divining with Demonic Sigils book, Sigillum Diaboli, will get you into more in-depth working with sigils and divination. But if you really want like a little more going deeper into divination with demons and ascension practice and communication with demons, channeling and that sort of thing, you want Drawing Down Belial. This is a newer one since the last time and that's basically what this covers. It kind of goes deeper into using spirit boards and pendulums and scrying devices and all of those things. It even talks about scrying milk and things of that nature. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. Some of the other stuff that isn't necessarily new, but that is useful. The Kazdea Rite of Baal is useful for more adept magicians looking to make a major life change. If you feel like you're in a rut and you're in a stalemate, that is when you want to do Kazdea. Now, there are a lot of considerations. I do recommend reading the book through at least once or twice and following the prep work, definitely, before doing Kazdea, because for some people it really is a game changer. This book has destroyed people's lives in order that they could rebuild them. But, you know, for that period where everything's kind of destroyed, not such a good feeling. One of the more recent, another recent book that just came out is Work Cunning for Demonolatry. You knew that was coming. It's our Demonolatry formulary, and it has incense and oil and tincture recipes for just about every demonic purpose and different demonic magical purposes as well. So incenses for different demons, including all 72 of the Goetia, including the entire Ducante hierarchy, and then some. There are some demons in here that aren't listed in any of the hierarchies. There are divination recipes. It's basically just a recipe book, another reference book for the bookshelf. That's what that is. And of course, it also discusses working with plant spirits, hence the Work Cunning. Another older one that's been around for a while, but a lot of people may find these books a little too specialized. Like Work Cunning for Demonolatry is a little more specialized than, say, the general recipe section in the Complete Book of Demonolatry or the Demonolator's Guide to Demonic Magic. And here we have, let's see if I can get in here, the Necromancy Gates, which is basically, excuse me, a complete gate opening ritual and pathwork of the Necromancy. So if that's something you're interested in, that isn't necessarily Demonolatry specific either. This is really just more for magicians who are interested in bringing the light of the divine through themselves. And if you're interested in that, and you're interested in personal pathworking, that's a book that you might be interested in. Especially if you're into contemplating more classical magic. And then, of course, we did put out the Abyssal Communion and Rite of Imbibement, which is basically just a ritual text. You basically keep this book in your ritual chamber to kind of follow when you're actually doing those particular rites. The processional and all of that is in here. It's more of a temple text, so to speak, as opposed to something that you just read. It's something you actually use. So it's not really for study. It's for actually doing. Now I want to talk about the Necromancy books. A lot of you are very familiar with the Necromancy texts. There is, of course, Honoring Death, which is basically your introduction to demonolatry necromancy. Introduction to the death demonic, so to speak. It's not just about the dead and about honoring the dearly departed dead or ancestral altars. That's all covered in here. But there are no candle spells in here because it's demonolatry. So let me put that out there up front. All of the books, most of the books I write, I can't say all because Curses, Hexes, and Crossings and the Noctemaron Gates are not demonolatry specific. But most everything I write is demonolatry specific. So if you're expecting something from a non-demonolatry viewpoint, yeah, my books probably are not what you want. So Honoring Death is the beginner's guide to working with necromancy and the death demonic in conjunction. Okay. And then, of course, there is the book Necromantic Sacraments, which was basically the remaining compilation of all of the notes and things that I had. A bunch of prayers and different things that didn't really fit into either Honoring Death or the Keys of Okkat. So this is kind of like the leftovers. And it's not very long. It's a small chapbook. So that's just if you want to go a little further and you want some supplementary material. The book, the more advanced book that people are interested in generally is Keys of Okkat. Now this is the nice leather-bound edition. There aren't any of these left. Keys of Okkat is basically a book for funerary priests, or people who aspire to be funerary priests, or who are serious about their necromancy and their demonic work. So if they want to work with the death demonic in a very serious priestly way, this is the book you want. And this is more for advanced practitioners. There's a lot of stuff in here that those new to the practice of demonolatry necromancy should probably not be doing. But if this is, there are the nice, what do they call it, bonded leather copies. The bonded leather copies are still available. You can get those on demonolatry.org. If you go to the Keys of Okkat tab or go down to the store and go into books, and you'll find it in there. And it's actually on sale right now. And those are nice leather-bound editions too, with like a burgundy leather, and it's got more of an inlaid or imprinted cover as opposed to the nice hand-bound leather ones, which is what this is. And then of course this is a book meant to be used too. Not just, you can read and study it, but there's a lot of very useful stuff in there. And of course, there is the Infernal Colopateron. A lot of people can't get the Infernal Colopateron anymore because it is now out of print. I occasionally bring it back into print for limited times just to, cheaper editions. So watch for that on my webpage. I might do that once a year, but each edition will be different, so each one will be like a limited edition. No two are going to be the same. Like this last one I did for a couple months had a red cloth library cover, and it was hardcover, so they were only $30, but they, I think only like 25 copies were printed, so something like that. So you can know that like anytime you buy a copy of the Infernal Colopateron, you're getting something that's very limited edition anyway. If you cannot find a copy of it or you miss an opportunity, I do have available to the general public the Abyssal Angels, which is the Infernal Colopateron Redux. I don't have an actual copy of that book here because I have the original Infernal Colopateron in front of me. And this, of course, is the hand-bound leather one. And those are no longer available either. I don't really like the whole limited edition hardcover market. I've only done two of my books that I felt were worthy of limited edition hardcovers. I've only done two of them that way, and there's a reason for that. I think magical knowledge should be accessible. The reason I haven't done like Infernal Colopateron as like a paperback or something is so many people think that they are advanced and that books like that should be readily available to them, and they're dabblers and they don't need that kind of information. in my opinion. I think something sacred. There are some things that are just sacred. And so I do kind of leave it to the serious practitioners. If you're serious, you'll either wait for a copy, you'll write to me, and I'll direct you to where you can find one for relatively inexpensive. But I will do that on an individual basis. So I don't, it's not that I don't think that the knowledge should be out there. I just think some things are sacred. And so the Infernal Colopateron Redux had some things stripped out of it that I felt were, they should only be for a select few people who were serious enough to embark on gate opening. So, but, my book, my rules. So, but for the most part, I don't know that I really believe in limited edition hardcovers. There are paperback and ebook copies of Keys of Okkat available to you. So, I want to make everything affordable and accessible so that you can learn. Keys of Okkat is not, it can be dangerous. It depends where you take it. Where you take it as a magician. And if you are talented enough to actually hurt yourself with it. Most people are not, so you're probably safe. That said, I do have a bunch of other smaller chapbooks out and available, but I'm not going to cover them right now. There are the Modification and Practice series, where I have basically how to modify your practice if you're in a specific situation. One of them is for people with disabilities or illness. One of them is for people who are living with people who, it's called Hidden Living with the Uninitiated, people who may be living with Christians or people who don't know what their beliefs are. There's also a book for people who are incarcerated, because that requires, a modification in your practice. And then there is the Demonolator's Guide series, and those are small chapbooks that basically kind of cover different topics more thoroughly. So there's one for pacts, there's one for offerings, there's one about demonolatry groups, there's one called Sex, Money, and Power. I basically write these things to address concerns, popular concerns in my inbox. Because I always get questions. I get about 30 questions, if not more, every week. I have a personal assistant who kind of goes through and filters all of it. So when I see a question coming up over and over and over again, that's when I generally put out one of the small chapbooks about it specifically to kind of help people kind of move forward in their practice. Because it's a lot easier for me to point someone in the direction of a book and say, I've written about that here, as opposed to answer the same question and have long discussions about the same thing over and over and over again. And if those who know me know that drives me crazy anyway. So that's one of the reasons I'm a writer. I don't mind having like conversations about weird things or really obscure things, but when it's the same conversation over and over again, it drives me crazy. So anyway, that's what I've been doing and why I've been busy and not hanging out on the internet making videos or hanging out in forums or anything. Is because I feel that my time has been better spent actually writing. So, because that's pretty much, that's really, let's face it, where my talents lie as far as teaching people. So I've been teaching classes and writing books and of course doing videos when I have time. So that's kind of where my focus has been, and that's also why you will not find me on forums very often hanging out. I just don't have time for that. So if you do have questions, feel free to go ahead and email me at swordartkyrion@gmail.com, or go ahead and I think I'll make sure that there's comments enabled here. So go ahead and leave me a comment and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks and have a great day.